Welcome, welcome. This is Kim Addis from Frame of Mind Coaching, and I am the host of Resilience Radio, where I interview professionals who are experts at crushing the tough stuff. Today, I'm going to give you a journaling question, and it goes like this. What is something that I really want to do that I keep putting off? In other words, you. What is something you really want to do that you keep putting off, and why do you keep putting it off? So send me that journal at kim@frameofmindcoaching.com, and we'll have someone review it with you. It's a very important question because what you'll start to see is that there's something that's getting in the way, something that has you deciding that there are other things that are more important, or that this thing simply is too hard, too overwhelming, too daunting for you to tackle. So these are the things we want to have surface to the top so we can explore it and help you get through it. You know, the other day I was looking at my emails and I got a question from one of the listeners. And the question was, you interview your guests, but you don't tell us very much about Frame of Mind Coaching. Tell us a little bit more about Frame of Mind Coaching. I'd love to do that anytime, but very, very briefly, what I want to share with you is that Frame of Mind Coaching is a little bit different than the typical coaching experience because what we're doing is we're looking at how your thinking is affecting your results. And if you really want to take a very close and good look at the Frame of Mind Coaching experience, I strongly, strongly urge you to go to the website, frameofmindcoaching.com, and sign up for a complimentary coaching call where one of our esteemed team members, amazing team members, will have you fill out an assessment of sorts and go through it with you. That experience will knock your socks off. Today, I'm super excited to have our guest on the show. It's a person that I've been following on Facebook for a long, long time. And one day he shared with us his TED Talk. I listened to it. I was knocked off my seat and I said, man, I really want you to be a guest on our show. His name is Azul Terronez. Azul, are you here?
I am. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Welcome, welcome. I'm so thrilled to have you. Now, let's start with this. I understand you're talking to us from a boat.
Yeah, that's right. I'm actually in the marina, which helps, but I'm on a boat in San Diego where I'm staying for quite a bit of time.
So, there's so much I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about your TED Talk. I want to talk to you about your life and your history and your experiences and your career. But what are you doing on a boat?
Yeah, so I'm a nomad, location independent. So my husband and I, we travel the world and live at different places. A lot of our time spent in Portugal, but we recently been spending more times on boats because we love being connected to the water. So I just happened to be out here working with one of my mentors and had some time, and a friend with a boat that was empty. I said, please let me stay. So that's what we're doing here on a boat.
Okay, so location independent, how does that even work? Like, you got to bring some stuff with you. How do you know what to take? Where do you go? How do you afford it?
Well, we take what we can fit in the carry-on suitcase. We never check a bag. Nope. I've been traveling since May without a place. We move around. We have a flat in Portugal, but again, we only take what we can carry on the plane. And you get used to doing laundry a lot, and you realize you only wear the same, 6 or 7 shirts anyways. So it just became easier to downsize our life. And when we left San Diego, where I was living for some time, we moved to Shanghai. And in Shanghai, we just decided to take suitcases and sell everything else. So we don't own a car here in the U.S. We don't have lots of things. What few things we have, like yearbooks, we just leave at our parents' house. But our kids are grown; they're in college, or adults, 21 and 20. So, they meet up with us at different parts of the world. And how do we do this? Is because our business is online. We write, we coach authors, and I speak. So it allows my life to be sort of mobile wherever I want to go.
And don't you have any attachment to stuff? Like, don't you just want a comfortable chair, or, the stuff you grew up with, the nostalgic stuff, the pictures, for example, my parents, my dad passed away about 1.5 years ago, and, my mom, unfortunately, is in a nursing home. So we sold their apartment, and there's stuff there that we grew up with, and we want that stuff close to us. Doesn't that matter to you on any level?
I did for a long time, and I carried stuff around from house move to state move to, and I began realizing that I want the stuff in my life to be the things that I do, the places I go, the stories I tell. And so I started to let go of stuff. Like my favorite things became smaller, and now my favorite things are sunsets, which go with me wherever I go. I'm trying to just appreciate the simpler things. So I don't miss the stuff very much. I often miss the people. So we spend a lot of time reconnecting people, going back to see our parents or going to see our kids. So yeah, I don't know if I miss the stuff. I actually really feel free not having my favorite things always, making me feel comfortable. I feel a little uncomfortable sometimes, but we'll bring things like a string of lights that we'll hang up wherever we go, or bring a throw that makes the bed that we're using feel more like home.
Right.
And that's a strategy we used when we went to Shanghai. Just like bring things that make it feel like home, and then it becomes home.
And what about the whole idea of sleeping in a different bed all the time?
Yeah, no, that hasn't bothered me at all. Some beds are less comfortable, to be honest. Like, wow, this is not comfortable. Right. But I wouldn't have noticed how comfortable my own bed was when I didn't have one that really was comfortable. So I think even that notion of like, wow, for thousands of years, man probably slept, on the floor and, not much. So it's like, just makes me think about simple things like even walking. I spend a lot of time walking now. And before, even if I had to go down the street, I would jump in my car, I'm going to go to the store. Let me jump in my car. Now I would be like, well, it's about, it's 2 kilometers. Let's, grab my bag and let's go. I'm more thoughtful about where I go and what I do.
Mm-hmm. So it's also a physically healthier life.
Yeah, I think so. I'm less rushed because you can't rush, a 2-mile walk. You got to be prepared to do it.
Especially if you're going to bring back groceries.
Right, exactly, especially.
Okay. I'm switching gears. So you did a TED Talk. Your TED Talk it was related to your history as an educator. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I was actually asked to speak at a TEDx Santo Domingo in Dominican Republic when I was living in Shanghai and still working in a school. I was a coach, coaching a school. But I had this thing in my head that I couldn't let go of, and I had been asking this question for 24 years to kids, which is what makes a good teacher great. And I collected 26,000 responses to this question, and it fascinated me because I didn't know the answer. In fact, I wasn't a great teacher, and that's why I probably had the question always pondering in my mind. So the talk.
Okay, wait. Let's really kind of hone in on this. Your question was, what makes a good teacher a great teacher?
Correct.
Right. And you felt like you weren't a good teacher. Like you were okay.
Yeah, I was
good. Not a
good.
great teacher.
Not great. I was good. Not great.
And how did you know? Like what made you feel like you weren't great?
I think all the things that kids said were not things I was doing on my own. Like I might be good at getting the work done or their organizing the classroom or maybe even getting them to get good grades, but that's not how kids measure greatness. So, I let the system determine that instead of listening to the kids. So that was the biggest aha. It's like, wow, being great has nothing to do about being district worthy, So that was what my aha was. It took a long time.
So what does make a great teacher?
I think, the things that kids say is most important. Like I think a great teacher listens to kids, and I'm not just talking about, I heard that their things are going rough in their family, or I always listen to my kids. And I tell people, I was like, do you really? How do you know? Where's the evidence that you're listening to your kids? Would they say this? Not your favorite kid, but all kids. Right? Because
do you think parents have a favorite kid or teachers have a favorite kid?
I absolutely do. They absolutely do. Okay. If they tell you they're not, they're lying. But kids don't want you to have favorites, but they want to all feel this way, right? So, I think that the thing is that if you walk into your classroom and you have a set of rules on the wall and you have a bathroom pass hanging there and you have all these things, those are evidences that you're running a system for the teacher and the school's benefit. Kids don't need to know how to go to the bathroom, in this day and age. The bathroom's right there. They should just be able to go. The rules usually benefit the teacher. But if you see things in the classroom that show that kids are like the focus, then I really think teachers are probably doing a better job of listening.
So I want more detail. I want more specifics. When you say evidence of listening, what's the evidence that you're listening? Give me an example of evidence that a teacher is really, truly listening.
That you would have these things on the wall that they remind you how you're supposed to behave, not kids. And I think I have a lot of my peers that get upset with me, and I'm like, that's okay. You can be upset with me. I'm not a teacher anymore, or a principal. I was a principal for a lot of years as well. Do you have evidence? Do you ask kids what would make me better at this and tell me how to do it? And then is there evidence that you're listening? How would they know? So like, the kids told me like, we think you should hang these things up, these responses. I'm like, oh yeah, you should hang them up. So I always would hang up their responses. A great teacher sings, for example. And I always thought, well, that's a ridiculous thing to say. A great teacher sings. Until I started to understand what kids were trying to teach me. So I would hang up what they said in my classroom and take down the rules, because they never said a great teacher has rules. It hangs on the wall to tell us what to do, how to behave. So there was no need for them.
So did you start singing in your classroom?
Well, yeah. So Danny, who's the class clown, I usually make them write 10 different responses to that question so I can really understand them. And Danny's were pretty good. But Danny is the one that put a great teacher sings. And I was like, he's being, his own jokeful self. So what I did is I decided that next day when he turned that in, I was going to sing the morning agenda, which included everything we're doing for the day, what the homework was, what they could expect, and I just decided to sing it in opera, like as if I knew what I was doing, with a big voice and loud booming. And then at the end, I just assumed that there would be laughter because this was Danny's joke, I thought. But what surprised me was they didn't laugh. They stood and applauded and cheered as if I were a rock star somehow. And I was blown away because I thought this was a joke. And they all gave me high fives and handshakes out the door. And Danny was the last one out, and he leaned in and patted me on the shoulder. Your sings. And I was still befuddled. I was like, what does he mean? This is one, it's incredible. I'm just blown away. It took me time to process, but they want you to be, as a teacher, to be humble. You always tell them, trust this, trust the group, share your work. But teachers never get vulnerable and never let the kids hold the space to trust, that they can do something and take a risk. And I realized they want us to be humbled and to accept the fact that this is true for all people, not just teacher telling a kid. So like, those are the kinds of things they'd say. And it took me a while to figure out, it's not the singing. The singing is the catalyst towards what kids are hoping for.
Which is be real, be a person.
Be
fun too. Be a little fun.
Be a little fun. Don't take yourself so serious.
Yeah.
It's not that serious.
Now, I listened to your TED Talk maybe 2 months ago, and if there was something I remembered, it was related to accepting an apple, something like that.
Yeah. So that was the other thing, that a great teacher eats apples was one of the responses. I was like, that's sort of silly. And I would just think of it as a cliche. Well, whatever, that's a cliche, giving your teacher an apple.
Right.
But it would show up again in different years. Like kids unrelated to each other would put this. I was like, why are they doing this? Like, this has to mean something more than haha funny, because that's not what they were communicating before. So I just bought a big bag of apples and I just started eating apples all the time. I went into Trader Joe's, I got big bags of apples. I'd eat at breakfast, at lunch, during class. Like, I was just trying to figure this out. And kids would be like, you're eating apples. I'm like, I know. I'm waiting for them to reveal. And they would just smile and move on. I was like, this is interesting. And they started to bring me apples and different kinds of apples. Like, my mom said this is a Macintosh apple. This is, like they really were really thoughtful about this. And it just hit me one day after a few days of this, is that kids want you to understand that you have a gift that to give them in learning, but they have a gift to give you. You have to accept that there's a mutual relationship here. There's goodness both directions. And that was really important to them. And I didn't often listen when they would do special things or want to do things.
So that's a very interesting concept, because I train people how to coach. And that's a very fundamental lesson I teach coaches, that yes, you are being hired to coach others, but there's a relationship that's built. And the truth is, when you spend time with anybody, they're going to impact you. So, and it's very important for you to share how your time with your client has impacted you. And what you're saying is very similar.
Yeah, exactly true. That's what they want you to. They just want you to understand that this is a mutual thing, and it's okay to share. I'm getting something from you.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's not only okay, I think it's really, really magical and powerful to let a kid know that they have left a mark on you.
Right.
In some way.
And teachers don't do this. And that's, again, another piece of evidence that I had. I was like, wow, I'm not doing this. I can't show you, point to where I've specifically stopped and said, here, let me tell you what I'm learning from you guys, because it just wasn't happening. But I wasn't listening.
Very interesting. How do you think that this would apply to parenting? Same rules?
I think, oh my gosh. The moment I tried asking my kids, what would make me great, they listed lots of things that I wasn't doing, which I didn't know I wasn't doing certain things. And like they would say, a great dad is fair. I was like, wait a second, I thought I was fair. Things, they started to point out things that I thought I was, but because I wasn't asking them to direct it towards me, they were directing towards what a great dad is. It started to humble me. So I had to do some shifting in the way I behaved. They would say things like a great dad doesn't yell when you do something wrong. I was like, oh, I yell? I don't think I yell. But in their mind and their eyes, I was yelling. So I was like, that's interesting. Like, I don't remember the last time I yelled, but maybe the way I'm communicating sounds like yelling or feels like yelling.
So I'm very interested in something, because a lot of people don't like to receive the kind of feedback that says you could be doing better. I mean, it takes a lot of trust and transparency, but a lot of vulnerability to even ask the question, what could I be doing better? So what drives you that way?
You know what? I don't think I always have been driven that way. I think I used to shy away from critical feedback that maybe made me look bad or feel bad about myself. And then I think it was moving to so many schools and realizing in inner city schools and in very elite private schools, kids want very similar things. They're not hard to do. They're just not things that we do naturally. And so I think I started to rewire my brain to like, well, what if I just did? What pain would it cause me if I just took feedback? Would I be crushed? Is it just because I feel, ashamed or worthless? Like, those are my issues. That's not their issues. I need to work on these things. So I think it was just a shift in my mind. And I started to change the way it felt. Like, it started to feel good because I was doing things that was impacting those people.
Right. So now you are this guy who travels without a bed, and you are a coach and you teach people how to write books. And so tell us about what you do.
Yeah. So the fortunate thing about spending so much time listening to kids was that I became a really good listener in other ways, which meant writing a book was always a big challenge for me. And my students are the ones that got me to write a book, because I was publishing them for about the last 12 years, and getting them to be published authors by 13 is a pretty amazing thing.
Wow.
And then one student just said, hey, where's your book? And I just cringed because I didn't have one. I was like, well, I'm helping you guys. They're like, but why don't you write one? And I had no good response. I was like, they're right. I had to really sit with that. And I realized the biggest obstacle to writing is fear. It has nothing to do with ability or content. I was just afraid. I was afraid that I'd be judged. And so I told that kid that. I was like, I'm just afraid that it's not going to be good. He's like, it's going to be great. I was like, here's this kid again, being my coach because I'm listening. And I started to write, and I wrote my first book in 30 days because I got over all the blocks that maybe I had built up for 24 years of thinking I should write a book. And it became effortless in some regard. And so people started asking me, how do you become a book coach? Or how do you coach people? Can you help me? So I spent a lot of my time helping find the ideas, because most people have too many ideas. That's what writer's block really is, too many ideas, not too few. So my job is to help them find the simple truth that they can tell, whether it be from a stage or in a book, and so that it's easy and effortless for them to write as well.
But even if I have an idea, okay, so for example, I have the idea that, again, I train people how to coach in this very unique style of coaching. And in the back of my mind, my next book, I've written one book, but my next book is going to be teaching people how to coach. I don't know what it's going to be called, but So how do I actually sit down and do the writing part?
Well, I think the biggest problem is first figuring out what's the simple message I want to tell, so that I can tell it over and over again in a way that doesn't seem boring. That's the hardest part. Is I help people get structure. Like, let's unpack what's in your head about the book. Most people try to do it in outline, because that's the way we're trained in school, right?
Yeah.
But the problem with being trained in school is we were trained to be editors, not writers. And the evidence I have for this is everyone hates writing, but they're really good at it. They're capable. Like you could do it. You could write an email. You could write a short blog post. But we tend to feel like, oh, I don't like this, because we write it to the best of our ability so that we get the least marks on our paper, right? Like I just don't want to have to rewrite this paper. So we spend all our time writing, editing, and we're constantly thinking about the outcome of how it's going to be graded. Not, is this a beautiful piece of writing? Does this communicate my heart? Will this change someone's life? That's not how we're trained. But writers, when they think like this, they let go of judgment, and that's all that editing mind is a different operation than the creative mind. The creative mind and the editing mind, the left brain, the right brain, they work together, but they don't work together at the same time very well. So they cause pain if they do.
It's very, very true, actually, that we have been trained to fear the red marks on our paper, right? In terms of writing. Right. It's very interesting. Now, I don't know, I'll share a little bit. I get my clients to journal in an online journal during their coaching period. Every single day they journal. And it's not uncommon for, like, after week 1, a client will ask me the following question: am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? It's your journal. There's no right way to do your journal, right? It's your journal. You can write however you want.
Right.
But they are still looking for the mark, the grade, that sense of approval.
I agree. That's where we're trained. And even if you think about the way you write an email, you type, you edit, you type, you edit. You can't help it because you don't want to be wrong. And I'm not saying communicate poorly or write poorly, but I'm saying the first inclination is, how do I make this without mistakes? Not like, how do I make sure I communicate what I really think and feel, or what I believe will be most impactful? That's not how we operate, because that's not how we're trained.
Interesting. So if someone were to hire you as their coach, how do you work with them? Like, how does that work? Is it a one-on-one experience, a group experience, an in-person experience? Tell me more.
Yeah, I do group programs for group programs that bring authors together in a cohort, and they write sort of in the same pace. My programs last 12 weeks to get the manuscript out of them. And I also work one-on-one, but those are weekly calls, and I do them like this on Skype, over a phone, sometimes on Zoom in person so we can see each other. But my job is to work with them weekly, give them assignments, which I guess being a teacher has prepared me for, giving them activities that they do that we unpack each week and they send to me so I can make sure they're on pace, and help them build a writing schedule so they know how many words each day during the writing sprint that they should be producing, and hold them accountable to those words. And when those words don't show up, we get on a call and say, look, what's going on? Because it's oftentimes they'll hide. Writers will hide and start mopping and doing anything else besides writing. So my job is to make sure they're writing. If not, to get in there and make the adjustment that needs to be made.
So you want them to write even if it's not perfect?
Oh, especially when it's not perfect.
Right.
And not to wait for some muse or inspiration to come. That muse and inspiration doesn't just show up on its own. It comes from the actual work. So I make sure that they understand.
So how do people reach you if they're interested in getting their own book written?
Yeah, they can reach me at coachazul.com. That's AZULCOACH.com, Coach Azul. And that's usually where people start to find out who I am and what I do, who else have I helped, and what kind of programs I have.
Okay.
For some people, they can do it online, like they can use my online academy, but a lot of people prefer to have support and know they're on the right path.
Okay, so I want to take a sharp right turn. I want to get into a little bit more of your personal life because you've had an interesting history. And I hope you're okay with that. Are you good with that? Okay.
I'm an open book.
So a couple of big things happened in your life. One thing is you were married for 15 years and decided to take a sharp right turn and go a totally different direction. And I'd love to hear about that experience and the recognition that, hey, actually, I'm not straight, I'm gay.
Yeah. So I married a woman when I was pretty young, when I was 24 when I got married. She was my best friend, mainly because I had my best friend, the boy that I was in love with, kill himself when he was 19.
Oh, my goodness.
And I just felt like I couldn't go through that pain again. And this friend of mine, she understood me and she got me. And she said, I understand that must be hard. And we just became great friends. And eventually friendship turned into love and we got married. And I didn't want that pain. So love was love, and I was really happy in that relationship. And we raised 2 amazing kids. And yeah, I was living sort of my life, being a principal, and she was a stay-home mom. And then about age 38, I said, this isn't feeling like me, and I don't know what to do about it. So I basically told her that I was gay after 15 years of being together, which, is a challenge, obviously for both of us. But when I did tell her, about a month later, she turned around and said, you know what, you've helped me do some thinking, and I want to let you know I think I'm gay as well. So
it was
like this twist that I wasn't expecting, because I was so focused on myself that I wasn't expecting that.
That's a serious twist.
That's a serious twist in the plot, for sure.
So now I have more kind of specific. Okay, let's go back. You had a best friend. You were in love with that best friend, like in a romantic way, or no?
Yes. Yeah, we were involved in a relationship, just not out. Yeah.
Not out. Okay, I see. And so then, and how old were you at the time when he decided to commit suicide?
He was 19. I think I just turned 20.
Okay, he was 19. You just turned 20. And did you know he was unhappy? Like, how does that, you're together, you're kind of together secretly, privately, and suddenly he decides that it's too much stress. Like, share that experience with us.
Yeah, so we were actually not together as a couple. We were just sort of, sexually involved and had our own lives. Sometimes we had girlfriends, but we still had that relationship. But I think it caused a lot of pain in general. I knew that the hardest part for me is I knew that he had suicidal tendencies. And, in the 80s, I think even suicide was not something people wanted to talk about.
Right.
And being gay and having these problems would have been more challenging. He never wanted to be gay. He always made it very clear, this is not what I want for my life. But I think there were other things in his life that were also causing him agony. So I just felt the burden of knowing these things, and trying to encourage him, but not knowing what to do. And so then when he actually took his life, it was really devastating. It's like, maybe I could have done something to solve this. Mm-hmm. Should I have told someone? So I retreated quite quickly away from anything that had to do with our relationship, or even going back to my hometown. I just never returned. I left at 18, never went back.
Mm-hmm. So you said, okay, that was a terrible experience. I'm going to stay away from men.
Yeah, that's just too much loss, too much hurt, I think.
So now you meet this woman. You're really great friends. She understands the kind of the pain you went through. Did she understand that there was romance involved?
Yeah, I think that was part of it. I think. Yeah, that was the thing I think she appreciated, but it was like, I'm ready to just kind of move on. At the time, I think you would ask, I would have said, maybe I'm bisexual, maybe I'm not, maybe I don't know, but that's not the life I want. So that was easy for it to be dismissive, I think. Like, okay. For
so
me too.
How does a gay man be married to a woman?
Well, I think there's a spectrum. I think there's a spectrum of people's sexuality. So at the time, my love for her didn't change because my sexuality was kind of dormant. And people ask us, well, how did you have a sexual life? I'm like, well, because for a great part of sex is about pleasing your partner, about making them happy, about being joyful together. So we never had that big of a problem. Where a lot of my straight friends were like always complaining about their wife or about their sex life. Like, I don't, maybe because I didn't crave it the way they did in that way, or I wasn't unhappy. I was really satisfied. And I asked her, she's like, yeah, it wasn't, ultimately when we figured out who we were, like, oh, this is what we were missing. It was different, but as far as happiness, yeah, it worked. It was a really mutual relationship. It was funny because I'd be wondering, what should the color the paint on the walls that matches the blinds? And she's watching the Lakers game. So I was like, we should have figured that out. But it worked because it was the type of relationship that our peers had. It just flipped.
Well, that's a little stereotypical right there, but okay, I'll go for it.
Yeah, well, it was true. If it weren't stereotypical, there wouldn't be any fun to it. So
right. I often come across, people come to me for coaching. Usually, they come initially for something related to their career, their business. They want to grow their business, their revenues, their profitability. They want to make a career switch, something professional. And ultimately, we get into the realm of relationships, and every once in a while, while, the question becomes, how do I improve my sex life? And for me, sex is really a mind game. Like, it starts with the brain. It starts with the brain, and then the body follows. And what you're really saying is, I love this woman. And so therefore, it wasn't really an issue. My brain was in the game until it wasn't.
Exactly. 100%. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And then she decided she was gay too. And so did you have someone that you were in love with or interested in, or did you say, okay, like, I just need to call it a day and be my authentic self, and then your next relationship kind of showed up?
Yeah, well, since we're raising children, we're like, this is more complicated than just, dealing with our sexuality. So we have to be thoughtful about this. And we weren't sure what we're going to do, but we knew we needed some support. So we started going to the LGBT center to get help for coming out. So she went to a group and came back, and I was actually taking the kids trick-or-treating that day. It was Halloween, and the next day she said, you should go. There's one for men. I go, is it good? She goes, not really, but you should go anyways. Like, great. That doesn't inspire confidence. So I didn't really want to go. I wasn't comfortable saying I was gay to anybody. I wasn't out to anybody besides her and I, like in a couple of friends. So like, this was still very hidden. I went to the center to kind of deal with coming out. And then, that's where I actually met the man that I'm actually married to now. Is he was there too, trying to deal with his situation, and he was married and was looking to figure out his next move. And his relationship with his wife was still good. They were trying to figure it out together as well. So it was actually a really amazing moment where I stepped up the door to take a risk to deal with my own stuff, and ended up meeting somebody else that was like a perfect match for someone that I care about.
That's amazing. How did you tell your children, and how old were they at the time?
We told them right away. They were 4th and 5th grade. We sat them down together, my wife and I at the time, and told them, look, we have something to tell you. And the hardest part about telling the kids that we were gay wasn't our sexuality, was the fact that their parents were splitting up. Right. That was the hardest part. I think that was the part that really hurt them, because it wouldn't hurt anyone. But our goal was, like, if we have any shot of having a good relationship with our kids, if we keep this hidden from them until they're, quote, old enough to understand, then they will resent us for like having dual lives. And we didn't want to do that to them. We wanted them to know who we were.
Wow. Okay. And so how did you help them through that time, both from a splitting up perspective, and I mean, it's a bit of a shock when you think your parent is, heterosexual, to switch sides suddenly.
Yeah. So, we got support with therapy, like got them each a therapist, and went to family therapy just to talk it out. And it was a lot of years of therapy, to be honest. And then the other part was just continually being honest. And during the transition, my wife at the time, I asked her, so what should we do? Do you want to live separately? Do you live together and try to raise these kids? Or like, I'm happy to raise them. She spent so much time as a soccer mom and doing all the things that weren't really her and her nature, while I was being a principal and working 70 hours a week. So I said, I'm happy to raise them if that's what you need, time to figure this out. She's like, yeah, I think that would be something I want to try. So I raised the kids. I was their sole caregiver, and she still saw them. She still took them and spent time with them, but I was the sole caregiver. So that was a big shift from daddy not knowing what goes in lunches and how to do sleepovers and play dates, to being the one who has to bring cupcakes for the party. And so it was just expressing to them where your parents still love each other, which we do. We spent holidays together, all of us, and we still do to this day. My ex-wife we had Christmas at my mom's house with my ex and her mother and my husband and my family and kids. They all flew in to have Christmas together in Austin last year. I think it's just how we decided we'd be. We love each other. It's not about love. It's about just how we want to live our life. So that's how we dealt with it. Just supported them. And then we became the household where people come over and hang out because they felt at ease themselves, and they felt comforted by the fact that they could be themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have that house too. It's never empty. There's always people, and there's always food going on. Always, always, always.
Always.
Always food. So you have a good relationship with your ex-wife. Did she meet someone? Is she in a relationship?
Did. Yeah.
Okay. So do you guys do double dating, that kind of thing?
No, not necessarily. We don't necessarily do double dating, but we did always meet each other's, potential loves and talk about it. That like I have an opinion that belongs to me, but that's up to them and their relationship. Mm-hmm. So both of ours, my husband and our spouses both got remarried. So yeah, we supported them, and we very much still stay connected and still talk to each other and still.
Okay, so if I were to interview your children about their experience growing up, what do you think they'd say?
Yeah, it wasn't what they expected. I think and that they're really grateful for the love that their parents still have for each other and for them. And yeah, I think I'd love someone to interview my kids. I don't know how open they would be to it. They'd be like, whatever. I think their life feels so normal to them. It doesn't seem strange. It seems strange to a lot of other people, but I think they would just say, it wasn't what we expected.
Uh-huh. Well, if they ever do want to be interviewed, I'm the first in line for that interview.
Okay.
Okay. As we round the corner to this particular interview, I have one last question for you, and the question is: you've got a coach on the line. Is there a question that you have for this coach?
What is the biggest item, movement marker that a successful person can do when they get stuck to grow that next inch, mile, or,
Yeah, it's very interesting just the way you ask the question, right? So when we look at the way a person asks a question, within that question lies a whole bunch of preconceived notions of what has to happen already. So the way you asked the question was, what do I need to do? What does a leader need to do? What does a person need to do? And the focus there is the word doing. Right? So if you're stuck, what do you need to do? And what I would suggest to you is you don't have to do anything at all. The first thing you need to do is say, okay, so what am I stuck about? And the question is, what do I believe to be true about this issue that causes me to feel stuck? So rather than do anything, what I would encourage you to think about or explore is, what are the beliefs that you have around this problem, this question, this area that are causing you to feel stuck? So I encourage my clients to journal, and maybe that's a doing exercise, but not really directly, right? And ask yourself the question, what do I believe to be true about this? And write that down. And what you'll find behind your beliefs are all the ways that you're thinking about it, all the excuses you're making, all the ways you perceive yourself, the problem, the others in the problem, the task at hand, whatever it is. You'll look at how you think about it, and you'll understand that it's your thinking that causes the problem before anything else. And once your thinking is aligned with the goal, it's easy to execute. But a lot of people believe that, look, I've got to do something different. You've heard the expression, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got.
Yeah.
And while it's true, it's a little flawed. Why? Because first we think, then we do. And unfortunately, that phrase focuses on the second half of the equation and never looks at the first half, which is, if my thinking isn't aligned with my goal, I will never reach my goal. So when you are stuck, the single most important question you really need to ask yourself is, how am I thinking about this? What do I believe to be true about this that's causing me to feel stuck? And write down like a big effort in terms of writing down like a big blast. Write down everything you believe about this problem. And in those beliefs, you will find the solution. You'll see you're thinking about this in a way that doesn't make it easy. And that's not necessarily the way that you should line it up for yourself.
Wow, that's very helpful.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, complete sense. It's like freeing and liberating at the same time. So thanks.
And if you want, it's an offer to you directly. Tell me what you're stuck with. Write it down, and I personally will help you go through it.
Awesome. Thank you.
There you go. Send it to me, Kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. Azul, this has been an awesome interview. So much fun, so interesting. We've covered so many topics. It was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us, with our audience. and really just being totally open and transparent. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kim, for having me.